I really became Graham Curry's action man to put his thinking into practice. He was the philosopher behind a lot of what started, because he had had these dreams of the flexible manufacturing for many years. But he was a more cautious man than me, and I was naive and brash straight out of university. And being naive and stupid, I once was talking to Sir Wolf about Graham's ideas. And Sir Wolf said, well, why aren't we doing them? And I said, I don't know. And he said, do you think they might work? And I said, I'm bloody sure they'll work. And so the next thing I found was I was to be set up this refrigerator division. I can actually remember one episode out here where we were doing something that was Graham's ideas, and we were building something, and he walked in and he saw all this fancy, expensive-looking stuff. What the hell are you doing here, he said. And I said, but Graham, it was your original idea. And he says, but I never thought you'd take me seriously. That was the sort of way we operated.
Wolf Fisher would frequently come out to the factory and do a tour through it. Reception would make a phone call calling Wolf Fisher for the phone, but he wasn't there. That was sort of a warning to everybody that the boss was coming. But the good thing about Wolf Fisher, he was a remarkable person. He knew nearly everybody by name. Unbelievable.
He used to go around the factory regularly talking to people and about how they were getting on and what their problems were.
The culture of Fisher & Paykel then was, from Fisher's point of view, was the staff were number one, we have to look after them, and if you worked on anything, if it didn't work, well, learn from your mistakes and get on and have another go, which is what happened, not just with me, but any of the design team had the same experience with the management.
He would also ask people their opinions about if there was a problem, how would they go about fixing it? And he was interested in everybody's thinking. I was at my first executive team meeting, and Sir Wolf was describing this problem. It was apparently quite a serious one. He went around his whole executive team one by one, asking them how they would solve this problem. And when he got to the end, he said, well, that's interesting. I have just been around the factory and I've been talking to Colin Bolton, and everybody knew Colin Bolton was the head cleaner. And he said, Colin, I was discussing this problem with him and he had a good idea. And I think that's what we will do. That was Sir Wolf. It didn't matter where the idea came from. That was the culture of F&P. He'd asked me to run the refrigerator division, and I thought, Jesus, I don't know anything about this. But, being naive and brash, and as a youngster, I took it on, but I wasn't an administrator, and I remember I hadn't been here long. And of course, challenges we were taking on were enormous. And there were times when I thought that I wasn't handling this quite so well. And of course, there would have been, I wasn't handling it quite so well. And I remember one day Sir Wolf coming in and saying, Julian, how are things going? And I said, Sir Wolf, do you really want to know the truth? And he said, of course. And I said, I'm not very well. I said, I don't think I'm a very good manager and I don't really know how to manage things. He closed the door and he said, young man, what made you ever think I thought you were a good manager? And then he said, what makes you think I'm a good manager? He said, none of us are strong everywhere. He says, do what I do. Gather around yourself a team of people who can complement you where you're weak. There used to be a book called In Search of Excellence, written, I don't know, 30 or 40 years ago. And it picked out all the best American companies and how they were led. And one of the chapters was called Ready, Fire, Aim. And talked about the chief executives who were a little bit trigger happy, you know, and and that sometimes the best way was don't horse around too much, don't aim too much, just pull the trigger and go, you know.
We were not a big company. We didn't have a lot of high-up hierarchy who were there to stop you doing what you're wanting to do from an innovation point of view. You know, I was only at a low level of the administration of the company. I was still able to do what I wanted to do, and that was accepted as part of the company, and just get on with the job.
We would often be up to our necks in shit. Nothing was working. So the solution was, right boys, let's drown our sorrows, because nothing's bloody well working. And we'd have a few drinks. And then, as you know, somebody comes up with a silly idea of how we might solve this. And it might be a bloody silly idea, but every now and again, an idea came up that somebody else then says, hey, hang on a mo, that may not be quite as silly as it sounds. What about if we did that, but we did this also? And then very slowly out of the ashes would spiral up a solution. And this is absolutely genuine. We'd leave that night with the bones of an idea of how to solve it. And the next day we'd implement it, and very frequently it worked. It was a bit like failure can create success, because it's the old thing, necessity is the mother of invention, and it's an old proverb, but I think it's absolutely true. I believe human beings have a natural tendency to creativity if only they're allowed to let that spirit, you know, give it free rein. And that was MP. MP was, he was absolutely immovable on, this is the goal, let's stick to it, you know, like those times when with people around the board meeting, the outside directors starting to get cold feet. Shouldn't we be doing something else? Is this really the right way to go? Morris would say, we've got no bloody alternative. We've got to see this through. To me, that was sheer bloody grit, you know. And that summed up this company. It's been a great journey, and what a hell of a ride.